Tommy Curran joins us on the Harbor One hotline. Tommy, football is back. The Patriots are back. The offense didn't necessarily show up, but is there any reason to be concerned with all those absences in the offensive line and really just failure to launch anything? I thought, Tommy, what were your impressions last night of a new offense with new coaches out there for the first time?
Boy, was that a long ramp up.
Sorry.
Hi, Christian.
How you doing?
Hi, Mego.
Hello.
My first, I said in a little preview, I said the offensive line isn't that bad because I had seen some practice reps where there were not a fleet of aborted plays, but there were plenty of them. There were a lot of run stuff, but you can't really gather anything from the offense, Christian, in my estimation, because it was so porous in the offensive line. I mean, I'm trying to conclude that I am less than enthused by Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris because room that was there was not taken advantage of. I actually, when we gave out our little game balls last night on Post Game Live, I gave one to Bailey Zappi. It was more of a Purple Heart than a game ball. But to go 12 for 14, not have any turnovers, take what was given to him, take sacks when he had to, spin out and throw it out of bounds. That's what you need somebody who you're hoping to be able to put his hands at 10-2 if the worst case befalls Mac Jones to do. So it was tough to conclude anything off the offense except for the electric Malik Cunningham.
You bring up Pierre Strong and Harris. Looking at that running back room right now, do you have any sense that the Patriots might be going back to Ezekiel Elliott or reaching out to Dalvin Cook or seeing what the situation with Jonathan Taylor is like? Or are they just going to play the long game and wait out one of those guys to see if they shake loose for a very bottom dollar?
It's really hard to figure out what Bill will do conventionally anymore. You see things that are yawning issues that need to either be addressed or ideas that he has that you're like, that's not going to work. And he goes ahead and does them, or he goes ahead and doesn't do something. And this running back room right now, you have a guy who was about 30% of your offense last year in Ramondre Stevenson. That's too much. Behind him, Kevin Harris doesn't run the ball hard enough. He's not impressively enough built in the upper body. And Pierre Strong is not elusive enough. And they've been around for a year. I'm not basing it on one swing pass that Pierre Strong couldn't do anything with last night, but that's your friggin' Super Bowl, bud. That's your Super Bowl. You better be ready to make somebody miss. Kevin Harris, 4th and 1. There's a hole. You shouldn't get hit by the defensive end crashing down. That's his Super Bowl. So to me, it's obvious. With Ty Montgomery out, and probably not going to be able to play a whole hell of a lot this year. And Kevin Harris and Pierre Strong, guys who are just underwhelming, it would be obviously time to do something about that. But what we all see with our eyes and what Bill ultimately does have not really been in concert over the last few years.
To say that it's hard to really glean anything from the offense because of all the injuries on the O-line and how Zappi had to run for his life and everything, Tommy, I understand that, and I agree with you to an extent. But we're not talking about an offensive line when they're fully intact that was a bunch of world beaters last year. And, you know, in some cases, you got rookies who I was expecting to be backups this year. Connor McDermott, who started a bunch of games last year. It wasn't all, guys who were going to be selling insurance in a couple of weeks here. That offense couldn't get off the ground. I mean, it was tough to watch, I thought. Like, doesn't that speak to the team building there and the fact that when a couple of injuries happen on the offensive line, you have a group out there that can barely even function?
I mean, a couple? It was the whole offensive line. Connor McDermott plays right tackle, not left tackle, but because Sidney Sau's a rookie, they threw him over at right tackle to protect him. The entire offensive line was either untested or out of position. So I'm not talking about the other group being world beaters, but again, I would base 87% of their malaise last year on the fact that they didn't have an offensive line coach or an offensive coordinator and an idiotic idea to spend the entire summer trying to put in wide zone, and it didn't work. I'm not saying this is the second coming of Nate Newton and everybody else along the Dallas Cowboys offensive line in the 90s. However, I think the 5 starters at the top of the food chain, McDermott included, and then Onwenu, Andrews, Cole Strange, and Trent Brown, is enough to create protection and holes. But you are exactly right. At first blush on August 10th, those guys were not ready for prime time. But I'm not going to read too much into it. That was totally, to me, Christian, and maybe I'm just whistling past the graveyard. We're being overly an over-apologist for them, but I have a hard time getting too riled up about ass plays from City South.
All right, then. If we're not going to read too much into that, can we read too much into Malik Cunningham?
Yes.
All right.
I think I really do, because to me, whether it's the fourth quarter of the first preseason game against the Texans scrubs or the second quarter of a regular season game in week 4, when you have a dual threat quarterback on a fourth down, you can freeze a defense. It's not a coincidence that Pierre Strong ripped off his best run of the night on the fourth down play when Malik Cunningham handed it to him, because the defense didn't just say, okay, they're going to run between the tackles, everybody up. You can't do that with a dual threat quarterback. And I have a developing theory, and there's no way to ask Bill about this and have him plainly answer it. But my developing theory is part of Bill's resistance to dual threat quarterbacks, even though he gets torn a new one every time he sees one, is the unpredictability factor. You have to let go of the wheel to an extent as a head coach when you have a dual threat quarterback. After 2.5 seconds, all bets are off. There are no reads really anymore. He's just going to run around like a chipmunk. And I think that's where the NFL is going. The Patriots now have an opportunity to foster a guy, turn him into something, develop him, and hopefully he answers the bell on that. But I'll be interested to see the Patriots' demeanor on developing Malik Cunningham, and I hope that Bill O'Brien has a lot of say in whatever direction they go, because I think that Bill O'Brien, and I would imagine Bill Belichick, would defer to Bill O'Brien to a degree and say, all right, let's see what we can do.
Tom, that's fascinating, because I was thinking, okay, this is a guy who probably jumped ahead of McSorley in the depth chart and will be a practice squatter. But when you say development and bringing him along as somebody that you can throw out there for the unpredictability factor, is that something you could see them doing this season in games? Or are we talking about something over 2 or 3 years?
No, I could definitely see a best case scenario. Phil and I talked about this on the pod, Mego. Best case scenario, you don't have to marry yourself to anything right now, but you can get engaged to the notion of it.
Yes.
So to me, if you're Malik Cunningham and you're the Patriots, you're going to look at each other and say, I do. We are going to try and develop something here. And I think with Cunningham, best case scenario is you begin to develop him as a passer, get him really up on reads and what defenses will do, start to put together a simple package of plays that he can execute. And if those pass the test, then you bring him on the field. Even if he's on the field under center and Mac stays on and then you motion Mac back in and he takes the snap, you're going to have to make defenses think. Gadgets are gadgets and they work, whether it's the Kansas City Chiefs or the Patriots in bygone days. You can make defenses think, and Malik Cunningham can do that. To me, McSorley is a lost cause. I really think that watching Bailey Zappi have to play an entire half and into the third quarter speaks to a lack of depth and trust in the quarterback room right now. And I think in addition to Malik Cunningham, who it might be hard to pass him through waivers and get on your practice squad, the Patriots are going to need to have a veteran quarterback on speed dial. Because I'm not convinced, although many are, I'm not convinced that Bailey Zappi is more than a backup. That if Mac tears his ACL in week 2, you want to have a playoff aspirant quarterback by second year, undersized, mild-armed, smart, accurate, leadership, genius, Bailey Zappi. It's not enough. So whether it's a Gardner Minshew type, a Case Keenum type, you need a complementary player in that room, at least on speed dial, I think, going forward. I don't know. What do you think on that, Christian? Am I overselling a dire situation?
No, Tommy, I was saying the exact same thing. You're singing my song right now. I was saying that too. I said if Zappi's not, if there's no competition between him and Mac Jones anymore, then what's really the function of Bailey Zappi? Why not have a veteran in there backing up the young guy? That's what I said. I said exactly what you were just saying.
I think that Bill looks at Zappe as value in the fourth round. Yeah, he overdrafted him to a degree, maybe, but he is a productive player. He's a smart player. He's a good leader. He's accurate. Clearly, I think players like to play with him. I think that he gets the team in and out of the offense. That impressed me last night, even though after the snap it looked horrible. Before the snap, it looked okay. So I think that Zappe is always going to have value here, and I wouldn't dismiss him as being a pertinent player just because I don't think he has a prayer of beating out Mac Jones. But is he good enough to be, as a second-year player, a backup quarterback for a playoff-aspiring team? I don't think so. I don't think if Mac Jones goes down, you want to be saying, all right, Bailey, it's yours for the foreseeable future.
All right.
So they need to have an idea.
We'll leave it right there then. Tommy Curran, great to talk with you as always, sir, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Tom.
Tommy Curran joining us here on the Harbor One Hotline.